Let's make some scones. I don't know if you remember these. I used to bring these home all the time. They were fun to make. Okay, first thing we're going to do, I got this dried berry mix. There's cherries, cranberries, and blueberries. I used to do cranberries and candied orange peel. You probably don't remember them, but they were fun. A scale. Put something on the scale, obviously it's going to take the weight of whatever you put on there. There's a little button that says tare. Push that down and hold it. Okay. That's going to reset the scale back to 0 for whatever weight you put in there. Alright, this says 3 ounces of berry mix. I got this from that Friberg professional pastry chef book. I've been working out of that thing for 30 years, 20 years. Okay, 3 ounces. Sometimes some of these berries are pretty big. So what we're going to do is lay them out. We're not going to chop them, but something like this isn't going to be very good inside of a scone. So we're just going to kind of run through them real fast and just kind of bring them down to size. That's all, nothing too fine. I'm going to put them in here for right now. Okay, it's calling for 7 ounces of bread flour. Bread flour is higher in protein, and that in turn makes the gluten strands much bigger, much longer, and stronger. Alright, so let's get this back on the scale. And again, I'll hit the tare button and tear it down to 0. Your scale will have grams, ounces. I do grams sometimes, get more precise. Okay, 7 ounces. This should be about 1.5 cups. I think it's 5 ounces to a cup. Depends on what flour, what time of the year you're using it. Alright, we're at 7 ounces right there. So what it calls for, before you go any further, is grab some of that flour, add that to your berries, and give it a stir. Alright, kind of grind them in just a little bit. Want it to adhere to your berries, so when you mix them in, it's kind of like flouring something before you bread it. Flour binds to it, then the moisture in your mix binds to that flour. It just gives it a good coating, and this will help them separate too if they're kind of stuck together. Alright, get them out of the way. Alright, so we got 7 ounces of flour, and we can pull this out of the way again. And actually, no. Now we'll tear it back again. Now it says 3/4 ounce of sugar. Well, you want to do these in a separate bowl, because if you put too much in there, you won't be able to dig it out. So usually you do it in a separate bowl. I'm going to just go real slow. So we're going to 0.75. Alright. And 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Anytime I write a recipe down, teaspoons I always write with a small t. Tablespoon I always write with a big T. It just keeps it simple. I can look down the road a year, 10 years down the road, and I know it was a teaspoon. So just 2 teaspoons of baking powder. And it calls for salt. Always use salt in your cooking when you're baking. It just brings out, this calls for 1/4 teaspoon. It just brings out the flavor. It brings a little bit of life to it, so it's not flat. Alright, let's get this mixed up. Now you can use a sifter. Sifter would be good for this. I just make sure that everything is just, all the little particles of flour and the little particles of baking powder are all mixed up evenly. All right, I got my oven preheated to 400 degrees. I think that's a little high, but that's what it said. All right, we'll get that out of the way for now. And it says 1.5 cups of heavy cream. So with the heavy cream, you're going to have to take 2 tablespoons out of that heavy cream to save it for later, because we're going to put that on top of our scones before we put them in the oven. Okay, so 1.5 cups. I'm using just 36% heavy whipping cream. They really all don't really matter. So we'll go 1.5 cups of this. And this recipe does use a lot of equipment for some reason. You got a bowl for one, a bowl for the other, a bowl for the other. You need a pan for the other. All right, so there's our 1.5 cups. Now we're going to keep out about 2 tablespoons. Okay. What did it say? 2 tablespoons. So it's about an ounce actually. 3 teaspoons a tablespoon, 2 tablespoons an ounce. So we're going to say 1 ounce. Beautiful. Get that out of the way. And then 1 ounce of honey. When you buy honey, always buy unfiltered honey. Look on the internet about the unfiltered and filtered honey. It was back quite a few years ago. We were buying honey from a foreign country. Turns out they were filtering it and sending us all just the leftover crap. There was no nutrients in it. So we refused it. So they sold it to another country, and that country sold it to us. So now, always buy your honey from American-made honey, unfiltered. All right, so this is going to call for an ounce, 2 tablespoons. Well, there wasn't a whole lot of sugar in this. But this honey brings out a lot of flavor. All right. We'll get that a stir. Definitely want to stir this up. You don't want to whip it. You don't want to grab a bunch of bubbles in there and start whipping the cream. All right. Got our honey. We got salt, baking powder, sugar, bread flour, and berry mix. Let me get this out of the way. Then it says to add the flour and the mix. Your honey heavy cream. Believe it or not, that's about it. We're going to get this started with this first. There's no eggs in this. So you don't want to beat this like a cookie dough or cake batter. You want to just get this, gather it together. I know it seems a little moist, but it's not. So now what's going to happen is that cream is going to hydrate into that flour. So we're going to let it sit here for about 5 minutes. Let it do its thing. Let it hydrate. You can see now it's getting pretty stiff. It's going to get a lot stiffer in 5 minutes. So I'm going to set my timer for 5 minutes and we'll be back. Okay, we are back. Let's see what we got here. Oh yeah, look at that. That got nice and hydrated. It's not as sticky anymore. It sticks to your hand still, but we're going to take care of that in a second. All right, so we are going to put a little bit of flour out on the table. Just enough to get things workable. You don't want to put too much because that's all that much more flour you're going to incorporate into this. Let's pop that down on there. We're going to knead it lightly, so just kind of toss it back and forth a little bit. This would be a good time for you to have your dough scraper available. That bench knife that you got. This is going to develop the gluten just a little bit. We don't want to develop a whole lot of gluten in this. We just want to just get it to form a little bit because we want some structure, right? See, this is where that bench knife would come in, but you'd be able to scrape that and keep it added to it. All right, there we go. Just another little pinch of flour here. So you're going to form it into a ball. You want to press it flat. Not flat, too flat, about an inch. Flip that over. 1.5 inches. It's got baking powder in it, so it's going to rise. So I'm thinking about an inch. That's a good size right there. You can see the nice berries in there. It looks good, huh? Now, I would use sometimes just a scoop. And I'd go around and I'd scoop them out. And that works just fine. It works, actually, it works very good. I've done it. Or you can make it square and cut them into squares. You get even squares that way. This way we're going to do it like this. We're going to make it nice and round. It's 1 inch. You could take your rolling pin if you want, just to flatten the top out evenly, not to make it any bigger. There you go. So now we have a nice flat top. So we'll cut this guy in 8. You can take flour your knife if you want. It really doesn't matter. We just don't make too much of a mess with it. Okay, this way you can go here. 4. Don't be afraid to turn your cutting board either. There you go. You can flour it between cuts or whatever. Okay, so here's the fun part. I'm going to lay these out. Can we see this? Yeah, okay, good. I'm going to lay these guys out. Kind of reshape them. They're sticky, so don't play with them too much. Nice. I'm going to clean my hands real fast. All right, now we get to use that 1 ounce of heavy cream that's left over. Be careful which brush you use. If you use one of those ones that's got a whole lot of bristles, it's going to grab so much heavy cream and it just makes a mess. And these are called cream scones because, well, that's all it is flour and cream and sugar and some honey and baking powder, which is a leavening agent. Leavening is another way to say it makes things rise. Yeast, baking soda, baking powder. Beautiful. That's it. Nice, huh? And I'm going to take sugar, put it across the top. I'm using this stuff called sparkling sugar. This is the stuff that doesn't melt. It's got really big chunks. Look at the size of those chunks in there, huh? So, be liberal with it. That's where you're getting a lot of your flavor at, a lot of your sugars in now. But too much, this will just burn up on you, so be careful. And it's going to dissolve into that cream and soften up a little bit. Okay, so the oven is preheated to 400. I'm using a convection oven here, so it's at 375 because they run 25 degrees cooler because the air circulates. And in the oven they go. It says 10 to 15 minutes. Here they are before they go in. All right, here we go. Come back in 10 minutes and check on them, and we'll see where we're at. It's been 15 minutes. I checked it at 10 minutes. They didn't really look right to me, but at 15 minutes they look great. Look at these guys. You press down on them, there's just a light spring back to them. You can see where the cream caramelized a little bit. That's pretty nice, huh? You flip these guys over, nice and golden brown underneath. So we're going to let these cool. You can, let me see if I can't get a close-up on these. Oh, there we go. You can see this crystal sugar in here that didn't melt. So that'll give it a little bit of crunch later on when it cools. So you want to let these cool. I usually have a wire rack, but I deemed that it wasn't necessary, so I don't have one anymore. Okay. So we're going to let these cool, and we'll break one open, and we'll look inside of them. I wanted to show you something about these silicone pans, these silicone baking mats. So that's sugar and cream on there. If that was on a pan, you'd be, see, it doesn't really scrape up all that easy on here. But on here in this silicone, it literally just rolls right off of it. That's the greatness of these silicone baking mats. So that's my fingernail. Just to give you an idea how the cleanup is in there on there. And this will just rinse right off. There's no scrubbing about it. Here they are. This is our platter of scones. It didn't come out too bad, huh? Nice color to them, nice and cooled off. Can break one of these guys open, huh? Okay, look at that. A little steamy. Nice and dry in there, creamy. The fruit is hydrated, it's nice and soft. So perfect. Hope that works for you.